Washington's clear-thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
7:38 on WMAL. It's Brian Neiman, Joe DeGeneva in the house this morning. KT Mcfarland, Fox News national security analyst, joins us now. Last time we talked, we were previewing the president's speech about the Middle East. So what is your take on him bringing up the 67 borders and also Benjamin Netanyahu's response essentially yesterday in front of Congress?
I think a couple of things. You know, I keep scratching my head. Why would the president talk about something that's so obviously a non-starter? You know, the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. Either he really thinks that he can make the waters part and he can walk on them, and he thinks that he's going to somehow drag the Israelis and the Palestinians by the hair into some kind of a peace agreement that's going to then result in peace throughout the region. He either thinks that and that he's delusional, or he's setting things up for a different event, and I think that's what it may be, that he's setting things up for the United Nations vote in September, where Palestinian statehood will once again be discussed. And in the past, the United States has either vetoed at the Security Council, it's lobbied to prevent the issue from coming to a vote. But what happens this time if there's the Security Council could veto it, the president could veto it, he could abstain. It could also be taken up as a vote in the General Assembly by all the nations, and Palestinians are very popular in the General Assembly. So what happens if there's a vote and the UN declares Palestine a state, saying that our precedent for this is 1948 when we declared Israel a state. We're now going to do the same thing with Palestine. And then you have a Palestinian state, who knows what the borders are, and you have a security situation where I think there's a war. There's a third intifada.
So the United Nations just declares that Palestine is a state, but
well,
we don't
vote.
Or they vote on it.
Yeah.
And the land, we don't know where the land comes from. I think that would be where the big.
You don't know what are the borders going to be.
Yeah.
You don't know the borders. And right now, I mean, I was in the West Bank 3 months ago, and there are various aspects, various sort of institutions of government that are turned over now to the Palestinians, you know, control of the water, school, etc., local police force. But the military there is still, the Israeli military still keeps the peace on the West Bank. Now, Palestine is declared a state. What happens to those Israeli soldiers? Do they go back to Israel? Do they fight it out? Do Palestinians start fighting with them? I mean, the whole thing I can see being just another intifada, that our unarmed demonstrations immediately become armed demonstrations, and you have another war in the Middle East.
KT, Joe DeGeneva here.
Joe.
Great to have you, as always. Here's what I think's going on. I think it's a little chaos theory that the administration is engaging in. I think that the Palestinian thing is a distraction, and I think what I get the really awful sense that the administration is pushing Israel into a corner where it has few choices, few friends, and especially when it comes to Iran, little to do but act. Because I believe that a friendless Israel is a dangerous Israel for their own self-preservation.
You mean that the administration wants Israel to take military action against Iran?
Absolutely. I think that
you do it so we don't have to.
Absolutely. They are farming this out to Israel right now because their engagement policy with Iran is a disaster and a failure.
Disaster. Well, you mean that? But again, every one of the sort of think tanks has started wargaming, or about 2 years ago started wargaming an Israeli attack on Iran, and they all had sort of different assumptions and different conclusions, but they all shared two things in common. One, that it immediately became a bigger regional war.
Yep.
And number two, that they all, in the end, the United States had to get militarily involved in some kind of a anti-Iran war. So I don't think the administration is. I mean, there may be people who hope that the Israelis take things into their own hands, but I'm just not sure that the administration is prepared to deal with a nuclear Iran or prepared to prevent a nuclear Iran, and I think they just that's the sort of intractable problem. They can't figure out what to do with it, so they sort of push it to the bottom of the inbox, and then they deal with stuff that they think they can deal with, which is Israel and Palestine.
But you see, here's what's I'm sort of at a loss. I can't figure out why he pushes this 1967 button right now. What's the benefit? What good comes from it? Because if you end up with this resolution on the floor of the General Assembly declaring Palestine a state, what does the United States do? Vote present like he did in the Illinois legislature? What do they do?
Well, you could see a situation where Obama says, Look, I tried. I told these guys how to do it. I met with Netanyahu. I've tried to convince them to go back to the negotiating table to stop the settlements, yada, yada, yada. They just wouldn't do it. So instead of vetoing it, I'm going to abstain. Or I don't think he votes yes. I think he votes at best present. But these things are out of my hands now. We lead from behind. And if this is the situation where the world wants to declare the Palestinians state, and nothing I can do to stop it.
So he doesn't want to own it.
No, I think he doesn't want to own it. And here's the other thing: if everything that Obama has said throughout his presidency is the assumption that the real problem in the Middle East, the real problem that all these Arab and Muslim states have, is Israel and their relationship with Israel, and if you could somehow solve that, then peace breaks out, and it's the age of Aquarius, and different things start happening in the Middle East.
But that's bull. I mean, we see that right now with what's going on in the Arab Spring. I mean, people in Syria, people in Egypt, and what's happening in Bahrain and other places, are they really complaining about not having a Palestinian state? Is that why the streets?
Less.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a big issue at all.
They never helped the Palestinians anyway.
They refused to take their refugees and give them citizenship. No, the thing about the Arab Spring, and that's why it was, to me, dopey that the president put it in. He should have just talked about the Arab world and America and the Arab Spring instead of somehow throwing that monkey wrench into it one more time, is that there are two phenomenon that you're seeing in all these demonstrations. Nobody's burning the American flag, and nobody's saying death to Israel.
Right.
They're all internal problems of their own for different reasons. And now, I don't think that this necessarily ends happily, this Arab Spring.
No.
I think if you see what's happening in the region now, what are the big lessons you're taking away? And that's the one guy that stepped aside, Mubarak, he's now going to be tried potentially with the death penalty. And in countries like Libya and in Syria, where they hang tough and kill their own people, they're still in power.
Yep. All right, KT, always good to talk to you. Thanks as always. We'll do it again next week.
Okay.
KT Mcfarland, Fox News national security analyst here on WMA.